everyone. Tanya with ALS Family of Faith. I am here with a dear client and friend of mine, Lory Bacio. She is just going to be sharing with us a little bit of her journey with ALS and the loss of her husband from this awful disease. And so I'm just going to jump right in and start with my first question. And just so this way we have a timeline. When was your husband diagnosed and when did he pass away?
Okay. His symptoms started just right at his 53rd birthday. He was diagnosed 8 months later and he passed just after his 55th birthday. So
Yeah.
he passed November 23rd, 22. So it was six
Yeah.
months, May 23rd.
Yeah. So since symptoms, it was right about a year and a half. But from diagnosis, it was less than a
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was almost, yeah. Yeah. So it was fast progression. Um,
Yes.
yeah. So it would
Um,
have been like almost 2 years from symptoms, but a year and a half from diagnosis almost.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And and I know this is going to be hard, but looking back on that day, to share light on ALS, and unfortunately, we know everyone with ALS does pass away from
Right.
not being able to breathe,
Right.
essentially.
Ultimately, that's, yeah, respiratory
Yes.
failure is the what leads to them passing.
Yes.
Yes.
And just thinking through after he passed away,
Hmm.
and we know you didn't get to say the goodbye you had hoped for.
Right.
And although you know where he is, and how loved he was, and he knew that,
Mhm. Yes.
regardless of whether you um, got to give that goodbye that you had desired. And I know that's a part of your journey
It
in
is.
that loss.
Some days I can grasp that, and some days I can't. Yes.
Yes, yes. Looking back, is there anything that you would hope you would be able to learn from and take from and grow from that experience? Just throughout. So, real quick, it's been less than no, it's been a little bit over 6 months since he had passed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Just 6
looking
months.
back on that, would you say that there's anything that you have been able to process and say, okay, I am learning from this, and this is becoming part of my journey and something that you are able to share with others who might be walking this journey now, or as a spouse of someone who's living with ALS, we know that this will be a journey that they are on um, later on.
Right. Um, it became really complicated with us just because of the ventilator situation. But that day was so complicated. Um, I guess um, looking back, I probably would not have trusted someone else. Quite honestly, because
Mhm.
I already knew, because we had had a short hospital stay earlier in September. Well, it wasn't really short, it was 16 days. And we were on the fourth floor, which I think is critical. And we had to stay there because even then, we had to be there because the nurses, you know, it was a different nurse every time coming
Yeah.
in. So we had to train with how to, what he was saying. Plus, it took them, a few days before they even got something that he could call them with. And it also took them too long to respond. So looking back, since I had just asked them to come and evaluate him, I would not have left him alone. That's what that would be my advice. Um,
Yeah.
just to, I hadn't had a shower, in like a week, so I did that, and um, so, and that's something I'm processing. My family was here, but they had just got here. Everybody had congregated into the kitchen, and because they hadn't seen each other for, well, they hadn't been here. This was the first time everybody had been able to be here. And, everybody thought the nurse knew what she was doing, and so that's my takeaway from that day as far
Yeah.
as, like, um, that, and
No,
yeah, I don't know if
you
that makes sense.
no,
That
it
doesn't
does
sound like
make
very good
sense.
advice.
No,
Okay,
no, it really does make sense. Knowing what you guys had gone through and you went away
I had reached
for
burnout. I had
yeah,
probably reached burnout, and, because I hadn't had any help, uh, and, no caregivers, and so my family had just arrived. It was just before Thanksgiving,
yeah.
and,
And this speaks to a lot of on the medical end. They are not super up to date with what ALS patients need and how they need to be cared for. And so I think just you sharing not leaving him alone says that
right.
exact issue is hospice was there to care for your husband, but unfortunately with not being up to date and completely trained in what someone who is living with ALS pretty far in their progression of ALS, what that looks like and how to care for them is scary.
Exactly. Well, it wasn't just hospice. These were critical care nurses,
Mhm.
okay?
Yeah,
And having, see, I did end up calling disabilities of our state, um, and they led me to Health and Human Services, which actually writes the rules for hospice that says they don't have to, provide caregivers. But they're
oh,
the ones that you call if you have an issue. So they're the ones who would launch an investigation. So the investigator, um, that I spoke to, um, you know, was actually with HHS.
okay.
So yeah. But this last nurse, there, the full time that they were there, I had asked the day before that we switch, what we were doing because it wasn't working. But
Yeah,
this last nurse just she took eyes off of him, but she told me that she had training in ALS. But she took eyes off of him. She was charging her phone and, doing documentation, and the night nurse was really good. When I
yeah,
um you know sh- she was really good. She made sure he was not in any discomfort at all. Eyes on him
good.
the whole time. And my son was with her, but this last one just sat down over in the corner, and yeah.
Yeah,
And he had changed colors when I walked back into the room, and she hadn't noticed. So that's how bad it
well,
was. Yeah.
yeah. No, that
So, but
is
this investigator doesn't told me that, they followed protocol. So you just, a lot of ALS patients go on hospice for long term. And there
yeah,
are a lot of really good hospice companies out there. This one um, is one of the top in the city, top two. We were referred to, and one of the top in the state, and this is a big state. They're all
Yeah.
over the state. So
Oh,
this wasn't like a podunk hospice company. It wasn't like, yeah, and this was the third one. I even had fired the ones before because they, just weren't cutting it. And
yeah.
so you always kind of ended up training them somewhat, but when critical care nurses come in, you kind of think you can take a deep breath a little bit,
Yes. Yep.
at least to take a shower.
No, and Lori, we've talked about this before. Um,
Hmm.
I very much describe this more along the lines of you're putting your husband in someone else's hands, and you want to trust that those hands would do just what you would do in those positions. And
Right.
unfortunately, it isn't always the case. And
Right.
some of it is just not knowing enough about ALS and educated enough to look for certain signs, um, regardless
Not
of
having
what that
enough
might be.
empathy. Yeah, and
Yeah,
not having enough empathy for the disease.
yeah,
Thinking that, well, here's this person that can't move you know, from the neck down, and it's no different than a paralegic or someone that's
yeah,
paralyzed, um, but not. It just is. It wasn't right.
yeah.
So
No, no, it wasn't. You deserved to take a shower and come back. Um, yes,
refreshed
yes, and ready to go.
and ready
Um,
to go.
yes. And so I just looking past that and moving more towards along the lines of um, what's after? Like, what was that process like? My husband is no longer on this earth with me. Um, all of the medical devices that you had, and planning a funeral, and contacting all of your family. And I can only imagine how rehashing all of it, because for each person that you have to contact, you are sharing your experience.
Yeah,
Um, what was that journey like? And
it was. I think it was. Well, it was difficult somewhat in that most people. I mean, like you would hear, that he's better off. Or they expected that he was probably in a lot of pain. My husband was never in any pain. Um, our daughters, as I've told you, our daughter was getting married in a couple of weeks. He just had got his eye gaze.
yeah,
So he was training on that. We just got um, everything set up so on his power chair so that he could, you know, take her down the aisle. He was so excited um,
yeah,
that our family was there. So, it wasn't like he was in pain, and it wasn't like, you know, I was talking. This is a horrible comparison, but somebody was talking about, I knew their pet was, I knew my pet was going to go, and I
yeah.
just wasn't prepared. And I thought about, and I was like, yeah, well, let me tell you a story.
Oh,
You know, it's kind
Lori.
you cannot, even though when you get that diagnosis, it's grief right from, as soon as you get it.
Yeah,
Um, you can't really prepare yourself for the actual happening. And when when there's trauma um involved, with how they pass, then it's really complicated. The grief
yeah,
is complicated.
yeah,
So I spent, I don't know. I spent a couple weeks, I know I spent a few days screaming. And as far as contacting people, my mom was here. My sister did come. They did contact some people. Um, his family blamed me. They're still not speaking to me. I mean, they didn't know about hospice, but they never thought he had ALS. They denied that
Okay.
so they didn't really speak to me. So I didn't have hospice because hospice never came back, and so I didn't have anybody to really contact anybody. But his work, coworkers, that sort of thing, we
Yeah.
just kind of use social media. Um, what was the rest of that question? Um,
No, no, I
did I take
actually
off in the
do
wrong
think
rabbit hole with
no,
that?
no, I do
Oh,
really think you answered that. And I just, you know, I am curious to, I know your heart, but I want you to share a little bit. You are now serving in the ALS community.
mhm,
Um, you are actually going to start serving with ALS Family of Faith, and you are in all of those ALS groups and
yeah.
on your own, reaching out to others who are either on the ALS journey or on this grief journey, and just offering support. And so I just want to hear your I want to be able to allow you to share your heart in that. And my hope is that hearing your heart behind this, that you would encourage um, others that even in grief, it doesn't mean life is over and that you cannot continue and that you are not useful to others, even in you are in a situation no one wants to be in. And so,
Oh, no.
but here you are serving others and you're looking past yourself. And so I am just so curious to hear your heart in that.
I think that looking past yourself in a way, well, for me, it helps me heal. However, it there's the pain. I made a decision before my husband passed because we had lost our son that I wasn't going to ignore the pain.
Yeah.
That I was going to process it and face it and give it. So I've spent um, you know, many moments on my knees or up against a wall.
Yeah.
And that's really when you do, I mean, the Lord's right there. And
Mm.
so through I realized right away that my husband and I were such a team. And once the service was over, my daughter got married, so she moved out. Um Basically all I had left was ALS Family of Faith, and I had Bert, and I
Yeah.
had you.
Yeah.
And I had and I realized I started looking, and for ALS widows and widowers, it's difficult because you can't just go find a group. Because if you were a caregiver, it's just a different kind of grief. And it's just different.
Yeah.
So, um, and you and I've had the conversation that they're just, I knew I wanted to help widows. I
Hmm.
just knew God was laying that on my heart. And, um, because I just knew he was. And, without you and Bert, I wouldn't have, I don't know if we'd still be standing. And I met
Yeah.
um my new bestie, that you introduced us to, which is another widow through ALS Family of Faith. And
Yes.
we call and are texting every week. Um, it is so hard because coming out of being a caregiver and this horrific disease, you've got probably PTSD, um, you know,
Yes.
adrenal fatigue, and like I've told you now, I've got this dry eye thing. Um, so there's just so many things coming out of it. And you have to have support, and the best support are those that are not going to turn loose of you. And I
Yes.
realized right away that it was Bert and you,
Oh,
and it's this community. So,
yes.
sorry.
No.
So, I just felt like it was a God thing, and
Yeah.
so I felt like, it's meant to be.
Yes, God has,
Did I
I
answer
mean,
your question?
yeah. No, you have. God has just covered you in, I know it seems like a small community, but a
Mhm.
very large community of
Yes,
people
powerful.
who, yes, and just to be able to allow you to
Yes,
serve and to support others who are walking this journey who honestly may not know the Lord, which I feel
absolutely.
like, yeah, is completely,
I can tell you that, because
oh,
like so many talk about, the churches kind of like fall away, and like my family's far away. You kind of lose touch with your friends, especially those that, maybe are longer, the progression is maybe slower. So,
yes,
you know, uh, the prayers the requests that I have given to y'all. Oh my goodness, I just feel so confident. The prayers of a righteous man, God hears them. And I have always felt those prayers. I just have felt God hear,
yeah,
when God hears those
yes,
prayers. All
no,
right.
yes,
So, right, so yeah,
yes. It
you know what
has
I'm saying.
been it has been a beautiful journey for me to join in on the little amount that I have, but just getting to hear your heart and even watch you work through this journey in such, I would say, a gracious way, and such a honorable way, for your husband and for your health, which leads me to, I have two more questions for you. My first one is, which you kind of touched on, you were a caregiver for a
Right.
year and a half, essentially, a little bit longer. And we all know caregivers don't ever put themselves first.
Right.
And I know a lot of your own health issues got put to the side. Um, and I just want to touch on the fact that I have witnessed you putting yourself first and putting your health first. And I just want to see if you would walk through some of that journey of, okay, I am going to take care of myself and what that has looked like for you.
You have to come to your own self realization of that, because common sense tells you that. Um, but I when since we were fast progression, it was like, all of a sudden he could not do anything. So it was like not like a slow thing, So it was like a marathon from the
Yeah.
get-go, it seemed like.
Yes.
Um, and I've told you, and I'm certain that there are either caregivers that if they didn't start being a caregiver with a disability, they probably started to have some complications with their health. Um, and I went into it with like fibromyalgia and
Yes.
migraines and stuff. Um, so, um, and my father-in-law, passed Christmas
Yes.
Day. There
Yep.
was that. And then I got COVID. So that like really put the pedal on my anxiety. And so um it was like what I'm the type of person I can't take anxiety or antidepressants or and I have, if I don't take extra certain vitamins, I'm just really a mess because my body doesn't process them.
Yes.
So I just, you have to get to the point where, and I know my husband wanted me to take care of myself. And
Yeah.
I kept hearing him tell me, he was so worried about me. So I kept hearing that, and that love.
Yeah.
And that starts coming through.
Yep.
You might, there's so many things, little quotes, you might like get 2 words here. It takes a while for the fog to clear, because there's widow's brain is real, COVID brain is real.
Yes.
And it
Yes.
comes through, and then you just start taking steps, and
Right.
most definitely submit those prayers to
Mm,
your care partners, and
yeah.
that support is there. um and it's amazing what God then starts providing.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
how it's happened for me.
Oh,
So
yes.
um and I'm telling you, I was so fatigued that when I got up in the morning and I drank a cup of coffee, it was so much energy for my body just to process that cup of coffee. I was back down taking a nap. That's how
Yeah.
fatigued my body was. And it's because you're working off of adrenaline, really,
Yes.
a
Yes.
lot of the
Well,
time.
and medical trauma. I mean, you
Yes.
are, yes,
Mhm.
adrenaline and that trauma, it is a
Yeah,
lot.
it's a
I
lot.
don't know the statistics, but I can almost guarantee that it is high, that with any kind of medical trauma, you are
Mhm.
going to be fatigued. And
Yeah.
um, I just, oh,
Just about anything that
I,
could have caused me fatigue probably did
yeah.
happen.
Oh, Lori.
Yeah. Letting
Well, I I really it's been
I'm
a
a
journey.
mess.
No, well,
No, no.
we all know we
I'm
are on our own little
no, I'm
yes.
honestly, you you know, you have to just um recognize that um at some point that God's fighting your battles.
Mm,
Um and because you, during the time you're a caregiver, it's like, and if you don't have any help, you feel like you're doing all the fighting for your
yeah,
pals. Um you're doing everything. So even afterwards, you're still kind of in that gear that you've got to
yep,
be the one that's got to solve all the problems, and everything. And then, but at that point, you're so exhausted, you can't take care of yourself. So
yes.
it's a really difficult place to be.
Oh,
Um, so,
no, but here you are, Lori. You are proof that, first of all, you are allowing God to take control. You
and
are
that's
allowing
that's
him
the
to
key right
fight.
there, Tanya. That's the key, is
Yes.
allowing God, being still, letting yourself
Mhm.
be still, letting yourself rest, because I can't, I also, I'm a late, or what do they call them? Older mom, uh, too. So, I'm just not used to that. I'm not used to just taking care of me.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
um, yeah, so it's letting
Yes.
the Lord take care of you, and
Oh,
letting, and when you do, it's amazing. I mean, he wants to do that. He wants
yeah.
to show you how much he loves you. He wants to. You
Mhm.
just have to let him show you.
Yes, that. Yes, you have to allow him. You have to let him be that for you. And so, really, to end my questions for you, um, it's kind of two wrapped in one, but walking this journey, you are still very much grieving. And I know we've talked about this. You will be in grief throughout your whole life moving forward. It is just, um, learning how to live life in grief.
Yes,
And yeah,
it's
I am
important.
curious.
I think
No,
it's important to note that that I've learned because when you lose your spouse, when you become a widow or widower, it's different. Even if it wasn't ALS, it's different.
yeah,
Um, and so it, you really at least have to give yourself, I read that, you start to kind of feel normal at 6 months. And I was like, you've got to be kidding, you know, but it's true. You start to feel
yeah,
just a little bit more yourself, just a
yeah,
tiny bit. And probably for the first 4 months, you maybe joy comes in just little sparkles, just little
good.
glimmers.
Yeah, yes,
Um, so in all the groups I'm in, and people that have been widows from ALS or widowers that are 1 year, 2 years down the road, still very much in grief,
yeah,
still very much.
yeah.
So you don't want to like put a timeline on your grief.
Mm,
That
yeah,
would be um, psychologically that wouldn't be healthy. I don't think.
yeah, yeah. It
You
could
want
be
you
more
want to you
harmful.
want to be healthy, but you don't want
Yes.
to not process. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yep. No, it does. Do you have any other advice for someone who is possibly having anticipatory grief, knowing that their spouse is in further progression with their ALS, or even someone who is on this journey of grief after losing their loved one and maybe not quite where you are, but wanting to be there, wanting to see that joy come through and peace, and allowing God to truly just lift you up.
Right.
And carry you through this. Do you have any other insight, advice on moving forward in your grief journey?
Those that are anticipating or you just don't know. With ALS sometimes you maybe don't know. Um so my advice there would be as much hand holding, as much talking, as
Yeah.
much recording, as many I love yous
Mm,
as possible. Don't worry about the house. It's kind of,
yeah.
just spend the time, talk. I would urge people, to make sure that, whoever has taken care of your legal things that they have done so. Um, um, I know that most of the major ALS organizations, I did learn, now have a place where you can do some of this stuff or have
Okay.
an attorney come to your
Yeah.
house. Um, for those that are just lost their spouse, honestly, whatever brings you comfort, if it's screaming, if it's crying, if you need to shake a fist at God, do it. Whatever you need
Yeah.
to do.
Yes.
God can handle it. God
That's
knows.
it. God can
God
handle it.
knows. He
Yeah.
knows. And, you
Yes.
know, um, it's then, I mean, you've got to let that out. He doesn't, you can't sit there and just be polite and,
Mm,
if you're angry, like I was angry, I
yeah.
wasn't really angry at God, but then, there were times when I was like, I had some questions, you know,
Yeah.
and we had some discussions, God and I, but you have
Yes.
to have those.
Yes.
And God answers. He,
Mm,
that's yeah. So to have,
yes.
do that. Um, you just I pray that you have somebody in this organization, because I
Yeah.
don't know one like it, um,
Oh,
to talk to
yeah.
pray with you, to text, because there just isn't, like, my situation was pretty heavy hearted, the whole journey. And to have a complete stranger, that I could, you know, share that with.
Yes.
And I mean, that's amazing,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and
I
that
mean,
is, I
that's
mean,
God right there
yes.
working. So I
Yes.
pray, um, you know, that you continue to reach out for a care partner.
Hmm.
Um, Wanting to feel better is absolutely normal. I mean, there were times when I was like so frustrated that I did not feel better. Why couldn't I feel any joy? It almost felt like I was completely not even this just wasn't me, because
Yeah.
um it I was completely joyless. you know it wasn't
Mm.
me. My humor was gone. Everything was, and
Yeah.
I'm still not completely me. um
Yeah.
and you even start to worry about yourself. This isn't me. And that's exactly when you reach out for somebody to pray.
Mm.
And that's
Yeah.
exactly when you call out to Jesus. And that's exactly when you get on your knees. You get in the word, and you find somebody in this organization,
Yes.
because I have always had extremely strong faith. And
Mm.
obviously, if you knew the whole story, there's been several things happen, as that would
Yes.
probably rock anybody's boat. Um, and for me to have hope, and for me to
Mhm.
still have my faith,
Yeah.
um, I guarantee you, um, what is happening. ALS is so horrific, but God is absolutely close to the brokenhearted. And I
Mm.
truly believe that God has us. I truly believe it.
Yeah.
Right.
No, he does. And, to speak to what you have said several times now, our care partners are here for that. When you are down
I'm not
and
trying to
when
sell y'all.
yeah,
I'm saying this is really real. I'm to sell it.
no,
I'm
it
sorry.
is. We are here and we are
It's
sharing
true.
the love of Christ through you and just here to encourage you throughout each journey. Whether that looks like you are caregiving for your spouse or life after losing your spouse to ALS and that grief. And I mean, the
You're
fact that
being the
you are,
church, Tanya. You're being
yeah,
the church.
yes, yes, no, that is the perfect wording. We are being the church, specifically in the ALS community, which I feel as though it has, um, this community gets dropped in
Hmm.
many different ways.
Yes.
And
Yes.
this is one way that we can come alongside you guys.
I
Um,
truly believe that. I truly believe that. I think, God's like, they're getting left behind in so many areas. Well, not mine.
yeah,
These ALS
yes,
families.
yes, I love
Right?
it, Lory. Well, I just want to say thank you so much. Um,
You're so welcome. I would like to thank you too. I love you.
thank you, Lory. Yes, this is just, I mean, I know that this is honestly good for your journey, but
Oh, yes,
it's also hard. It is hard for you to
it
get on
is.
here and share this.
It is. I'm a
Um,
nervous wreck.
yeah, I love you so much. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing how Christ has worked in your life and how he has carried you throughout this journey. And I just hope that this can be an encouragement to anyone who is